It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre.
All right, here we are.
Hi.
Hey, so it is June.
It is June.
It is Pride Month.
It is Pride Month. Well, in some areas.
In some areas, exactly. In some areas, it'll be later on. It'll be in August, but it should always be Pride Month. We should always be proud.
We should always be proud. So welcome to Mondays with Tara and Andre. So if this is your first time joining us, or if you've joined us before sometimes and just wonder why it's at 11 o'clock, we do meet here. Mm-hmm. Are you in trouble with your tie? It looks fine.
I'm always having trouble with
my tie. Doesn't it look fine?
It looks fine. You know, over years of making the knots, you think that it would get rather automated, and sometimes it just it comes off like this. You never know what you're going to get. It's all good. It's all good.
Anyway, we come here live at 11 a.m. every Monday.
Seems like it's every Monday, yeah.
It is every Monday. I think we missed one. Can you make sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we did miss one perhaps, but it's interesting the way it came about, because I don't know that we ever conceived that it was going to be this weekly thing, right? It was the idea that we'd form this thing and be able to, come together, have a platform for people to talk about their sexual identities, their sexual expressions, their way of relating, whatever it is that they want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And it kind of rolled into this weekly thing.
Yeah. Well, we made a decision. I think we made a conscious decision to come here live to talk about important topics based on what people have told us coming into the group and from what we see in our own practices and that sort of thing. So here every Monday at 11, pretty much Eastern. So first off, it is Pride Month, as you said.
It is, yes.
And if you're going to be in the Toronto area, around June 26th, or actually on June 26th, it's the Toronto Pride Parade. Mm-hmm. And this year we registered an official marching, skating float.
Yeah, because last time we kind of inserted ourselves into other people's floats, right? This time we're going to have our own little contingencies. So you're welcome to come down to that. And then possibly in Montreal later in August. But let's go back to the one in Toronto, which is Sunday, right?
It's Sunday,
and I've said this many times before, but if you've not been to Pride in Toronto, it is one of the biggest Pride celebrations in the world, and it is full of love and good vibes. So come with open heart, come be part of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the last time there was official parade was over 3 years ago. Yeah. So for the last 2 years, we had an unofficial parade with some friends in the village, because I live in the village. You lived in the village as well last year before you got this sweet place in Montreal. But prior to that, as you said, we were looking for a group that I belonged to and couldn't find them. So we sort of inserted ourselves in with the Fido people. So if you look at the parade from a few years ago and look at Fido's Instagram, we're in there.
And why Fido's? Because they had the best music. Go figure. Fido's. All right.
So yeah, for sure. So it's a pay what you can.
So where are we assembling? Where are we starting on that?
So we're starting off at my place in the village. We're going to have a pre-parade warm-up so we can get together, meet each other. You can get dressed, that sort of thing. Just get excited, fill up our water bottles,
So your place can hold about 2,000-3,000 people?
Sure, 3,000 people. Cool. Yeah. So we'll squeeze in there. It could be tight, but it's going to be fun.
Tight's good.
Yeah. So as we're participating in Pride this year, we thought it was a great topic to discuss. And also somebody actually sent you
so
Instagram post about this topic.
Exactly. So I sent one of my lovely partner friends, people that I know, an invite to join us on the parade march. And they didn't say yes, they didn't say no. They sent me an article that was posted on Insta, and it is talking about the pros and cons of poly being in the parade and what some people would call piggybacking on it, right? So it's not as though we've come up with our own parade and stuff. We are wanting to include that in the Pride March.
Yeah.
So I identify as queer, whatever that means. I'm a strange fellow, as many of you might know, and I feel as though I have my own rights to go march on that. But I also want to express myself as being polyamorous, because I think it's important that we talk about it, because it is often marginalized. It is, for many people, not an expression that they're able to come to and say openly. Mm-hmm. There are repercussions, serious repercussions. Some people, I know of a couple who were afraid to announce their position because they were afraid that their custody of their children might come into play. Others have been told to me that they are concerned if they came out as poly, that they would be, it might interfere with their employment at work. Some places it is that severe. And that there are other things that could be, you could be expelled or excommunicated from your church. Some people have called me immoral and disgusting, and that's outside of that. I'm talking particularly with polyamorous. So there's a reason to come out, be normalized, be valid, that. But maybe we go back a little bit further.
Yeah, let's go back a little bit further. So we'd love to hear from you. Some of you have already commented in the group, which I think is amazing. I think all dialogue is welcome and important. And as long as we're respectful to each other, then I think that it's great. We can all have our views. We can all, express our opinions as long as we do so respectfully. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the same thing in our relationships too, right? I mean, we can have differing opinions. We don't shut down on it. We want to listen to understand and find out where we can come to have some harmony in this.
Yeah, exactly. So when we did register, it was interesting because I did register us as TNA and Let's Talk Polyamory. And, I've been thinking since then, like what exactly, and as I was filling it out, I was thinking, we have a right to be part of it. And I know from other friends, they've participated in Pride events before and have felt that they, people had told them that they shouldn't be included,
right.
And it's such an interesting topic, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of the last year that Pride was happening. And before the Pride parade, there was the lesbian bike march, right?
Yes.
And we went to go check it out because it was right on the corner. And for whatever reason, I wanted to step off the curb and join them. And you're like, no, you're presenting as a cis male, maybe you're not going to be so welcome. And I was like, no, I want to go in as an ally. And as soon as I stepped off the curb, I was immediately embraced by this wonderful person. And we walked arm in arm through the whole time. And I felt as though I was very welcomed. So it was that spirit of wanting to be there, saying, yes, I see you. I love you. I want to be part of you. And you want to be part of me. And it was that sense of community, that feeling of love. And I think that the same should be true of the Pride March. It's about, for me, the idea of inclusion, of being recognized, being normalized, destigmatized, all of that. So I say, why don't we allow for our allies? Why don't we allow for these different expressions? And I don't think that including this waters it down or dilutes from that. In fact, I think it brings it over and says, yes, you are purple, I see you. You are yellow, I see you. And all of these things come together and make us stronger, more voices.
And I think that for some people, and I hope it's saying as well for the same things about people who are kink and pride, it's the same thing. Should you be included or not? So our erotic diversity. So some people say, so let's present both sides, because I think it's fair to do that pride is about recognizing our sexual and gender identities.
Right.
While others believe that there is space within the LGBTQIA2 spirited plus, banner to include more people, and that doing so will help recognize, because people who are non-monogamous face issues around legislative issues, so custody, like you said, and that sort of thing. And some people truly feel like this is who they are, and it's not just a choice. Right. Now, there is debate on that for sure, 100%.
But wait a second. Who they are, and it's not a choice. So I'm born straight, queer, gay, whatever. But what if I even choose to be gay? What if I choose to be bi? What if I choose to be? So what I choose, does they make it more valid or less valid one way or the other? It's how you want to express yourself. But the thing is, whatever brings me to be queer, it's how I want to be. But I don't want other people saying that I am immoral or disgusting because of the way that I want to express myself, either in my sexual identity, sexual preferences, or the way that I relate to other people. Yeah, so I don't want those marginalizations happening. And I think that it could happen when we say, well, this group's not included and that group is. But I think some people are also concerned that there's maybe people who aren't having experienced these issues are going to come in and just make it into a watered down event. And, what's the purpose of that? It does kind of lose the spirit of the message. I get that as well.
Yeah, and I think some of this comes back to the history of why Pride originally started. Right. Beginning back in 1969, when there was the Stonewall riots. Raids. They turned into riots, but yeah, they started off as raids.
Right. And I've told you many times, I've told you many times that I was in a therapy group, and friends with Andy Velez, who was at those Stonewall riots. He was instrumental, and later on went out to become one of the leading advocates for gay rights and human rights, for that matter. So
maybe riots is not the right word. It was demonstrations. It was strong demonstrations as people clashed with police because people were sent to jail, and there was all kinds of things that happened as a result of that.
There was a big uproar, and let me tell you, Andy himself, who was there, referred to it as riots very often.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking
Stonewall riots.
So on the first anniversary of that raid of Stonewall, that's when the first marches took place in places like Manhattan and Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And then
even in Canada here.
And in Canada a little bit later, 1971, there was some protests took place with demonstrations in Toronto and Ottawa and Vancouver. And then 1 year later, I think 1972, Toronto hosted its first Pride event, which was like a picnic, I think, on the island.
How quaint.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you think about that sort of thing, that's where people go, well, people had to fight for rights, related to their sexual or gender identity.
Right. But the way that I I identify that is a big part of who I am, who I feel I am. So I think that I need to have that venue, that opportunity of expression, that I want to feel valid and not feel as though I have to kind of keep it under wraps, which kind of runs parallel to what it was like for people who were identifying as gay, that they had to keep it under wraps, and there was a lot of shame and embarrassment attached to it, a lot of misunderstanding. And I think that this happens now, is seen in the poly community as well. There are people that knew me before I came out as being poly, who seemed to accept me very well and had me into their home. And then once they found out that I was a little queer, a little poly, I was labeled as immoral and disgusting. And that's just because of the way that I relate to other people, just the way that I identified as that part. Yeah. So it seems horrific that would even be the question.
I mean, I've had the same experience with my own family, and some of that might have been related to my family as well, of coming out. And there's some stuff in the group about that journey, which continues today, more than a year later. Yeah. And it's definitely not the same thing that people experience. Like, people who identify as gay have been killed in, certain countries, mutilated, and there's all kinds of things that happen more serious. But then is the severity, I think we were talking about earlier, does the severity of what the impact is, should that include you in a movement?
Yeah, no, I don't think that it becomes a comparison like that. Like, well, you've never been stoned or you've never been put to death because of it. Yes, those are horrific crimes. They should never have taken place. But that doesn't mean that people who identify this other way haven't felt as though they've been ostracized or, labeled as immoral or disgusting or any of those things, right? So just because one crime is more horrific than the other doesn't invalidate the others. It is the feeling state. And for me, when I go to Pride, it is a feeling of inclusion. It is a feeling of love, of acceptance, of being normalized, of being part of this scene spectrum.
I think you and I are presenting the pro and con thing. That wasn't planned, but I'm trying to present both sides. And
I think I'm obviously rather pro about it, but I can see.
I'm pro too. I'm just trying to present the differing view. So some people would argue that you're not born monogamous or polyamorous, that you're conditioned. Most of us are conditioned that the norm, the regular route, is monogamous. Okay,
well, what about conditioned to be either straight or gay? Being bisexual is still seen as kind of like, in the gay community, guys who come into it who might be with girlfriends are seen as being tourists, and they're seen as not entirely always welcome, right? So, I mean, I don't know that if you're born or make the choice should be part of the argument. I think it's how you identify. So when you identify as gay, I don't say, well, were you born that way or are you choosing to be that way? It's just, that's how you identify. You're valid to have your feelings. And you'd like me to recognize them. And I say, yes, okay, that's fine. That's how you identify. I see you.
Yes.
You're valid.
But I think some of the argument against having polyamorous people that have different relational identities other than monogamous be included is then that is going to open the door to people that are cisgender and heterosexual.
So why shouldn't we have them come in as allies?
I don't know. I think allies are welcome. You know what I mean?
Well, can we ask the cisgender people to behave themselves? What might they do to be destructive? I don't know. But, there is the idea, right? So if we do put another color on the flag, if we do put more of this representation, then where does it stop? I mean, what's next, right? So people might feel as though this whole idea was kind of watered down, and now it's like, everybody.
Yeah, well, you keep adding and adding and adding. I think that's the sort of.
But that's what poly people do, is they keep adding. No, but I mean, it's like, is there only a limited amount of love? Is there only a limited amount of places available at the table? And I subscribe to a universe of abundance that says, no, there's room for everyone. Love is love. Love is love. So whether you see it as you're born with that identity, or you choose to identify, or you relate that way, or you choose to, it is another expression of love.
Yeah, I just put a comment up from Kit. I think it's a great comment about normalization and representation often feels similar when discussing relationship queer dynamics, but I do think the two exist outside of each other. Not all polyamorous people are queer, and not all queers are polyam. Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And I think in the Instagram post we saw, it was said that including would mean that there was an assumption that people that are LGBTQ are poly, and I don't know how that. I didn't get that argument at part of it, because I think that you don't need to be all those things. We are like it said, like a broad, complex makeup of identity, whether it be our gender, our sexual, our erotic, and our relational diversities. Right. We are all these things.
But as you said, it really comes back to me, the idea of the feeling state of self. So whether I've chosen this or I'm born this way, whether it is my sexual expression or my sexual identity or the way that I relate, what feelings come up in me? Do I feel embarrassed and ashamed? Do I feel marginalized and invisible? Or do I feel welcome? Do I feel valid? Do I feel normalized? Do I feel as though the way that I feel is as valid, regardless of how it comes to be, regardless of the expression? And for me, I want to normalize all of this. It's all part of the human experience. And I think for that reason, it should be included. So I'm going to state my opinion and say, yes, I think it should very much be included. The other thing is, I know that it's not always a question of intent. It is about impact, but my intention and the people that I invite to it, the intention is that of inclusion and of love, of destigmatizing, of normalizing, and making it just as valid.
And self-acceptance.
And self-acceptance, right? And acceptance, by the way. Yeah, self-acceptance.
Yeah.
So if we tell these people that, no, you're not welcome here, you're not part of this, does it then make them go back underground and say, well, the way I am, it's kind of creepy, or like, I should be careful who I tell, and all those things that people not long ago had to do. I mean, not long ago, being gay was considered part of a mental illness. I mean, it's not that long ago. So we had these demonstrations, and we are thankful for them. We recognize that their hard work and their riots led to our freedoms. But in that, we're also going to say that we extend it beyond just being gay and lesbian. There are many other people who need to come and be seen.
I even think about just the makeup of this group itself. Is people join the group and they often have a separate Facebook profile for things around their relational identity, whether they are swingers or polyamorous or however they identify, because they don't want people knowing, because it could have impacts on them from a socioeconomic,
legal, for sure. There's
perspective.
There's a whole bunch of things that come into play. So that's why, because the idea of being poly is still considered to be rather perverse, or it is seen as disgusting and immoral, right? So because of these ways, it has to be, So because of these considerations, people go underground and they are not feeling as valid. They are feeling marginalized and invisible and canceled.
Yeah, cancel.
So
what do you think about that?
Well, again, I know that it's not just a question of intention, it's a question of impact, but it is my sincere hope and desire that we would not be offending people by inviting and wanting to include it, but that we would see it as another opportunity to grow our spirit of inclusion and acceptance and normalization for all expressions.
I think, my personal belief is pride is about being proud of who you are as your entire person. And with love, I'd like to think this is why when I explain things about polyamorous, and with love, there's always room for more. I don't think it waters down the strength of the cause, but it elevates and lifts everyone. Like, can we be all included? And I totally get that some might not feel that way, and that's totally fair, but that's what I would like to believe. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. So we'd love to continue this dialogue, and please drop any comments here in this video. If you are in the Toronto area, we'd love for you to join us at Pride. We are going to representing all of ourselves, whether it's our relational identity or sexual or gender identity or our erotic identity. And we'd love for you to come and participate. And so. Yeah.
Come with an open heart and bring love.
Yeah.
And be willing and able to accept love. It'd be great. It'd be awesome.
There we are.
We froze for a second. I said at least we froze the smell, so that's nice.
Oh, someone from Israel is going to a march as non-monogamous on Friday. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Yeah, tell us what you're doing to Pride. I would love to hear that.
And pictures too, please.
Pictures, yes.
If you're willing and able.
Yeah, post your pictures in the group. We love to see those things. Okay, thanks everybody. I don't know what happened to the live, but it happened weird. Okay, bye. Happy Pride.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks, and have a fantastic, sexy day.